We're in 1 Samuel 25. And here's the thing. We are going to go through the whole chapter tonight. I had considered taking this and doing half the chapter tonight and half the chapter on the weekend services. But the reality is if I split this up, I'm going to spend the second message spending half the time going over the first part of the story anyways. So we're just going to move through it and do a running commentary tonight. As I look at it, I am going to stop here and there at different places. But just so you know, my main thoughts with this, I'm breaking into three different thoughts. And they follow three words: wrath, peace, and marriage. Wrath, peace, and marriage. 1 Samuel 25, verse 1 says this: Now Samuel died, and all Israel assembled and mourned for him, and they buried him in his house at Ramah. I said we're reading the entire chapter tonight, so we're reading that. That's actually going to be our main verse for our weekend services. And so I won't say much about that tonight, other than it's fascinating that for the death of Samuel, he's given one verse here, one verse. And I want to deal with that over our weekend services, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And it is interesting because even though Samuel dies here in one verse at the beginning of this chapter, in the book of 1 Samuel, it's not the last time we're going to see Samuel. And if you know what I'm talking about, you probably just had like a little Scooby-Doo moment. And you're like, ooh, right? Because it's interesting when we see Samuel again. It goes on with this. Then David rose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. And there was a man in Maon whose business was in Carmel. The man was very rich. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. He was shearing his sheep in Carmel. Now the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife Abigail. The woman was discerning and beautiful, but the man was harsh and badly behaved. He was a Calebite. David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing his sheep. So David sent 10 young men, and David said to the young men, "Go up to Carmel and go to Nabal and greet him in my name. And thus you shall greet him. Peace be to you, and peace be to your house, and peace be to all that you have. I hear that you have shearers. Now, your shepherds have been with us, and we did them no harm. And they missed nothing all the time they were in Carmel. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. Therefore, let my young men find favor in your eyes, for we come on a feast day. Please give whatever you have at hand to your servants and to your son David." When David's young men came, they said all this to Nabal in the name of David, and then they waited. And Nabal answered David's servants, "Who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants these days who are breaking away from their masters. Shall I take my bread and my water and my meat that I have killed for my shearers and give it to men who come from I don't know where?" So David's young men turned away and came back and told him all of this. And David said to his men, "Every man strap on his sword," and every man of them strapped on his sword. And David also strapped on his sword. And about 400 men went up after David, while 200 men remained with the baggage. As we start out this story in the first 13 verses, There's something that is a little bit hard to catch as we read the Bible in narrative sections. So often we just move from one sentence to another. And sometimes the writers will give indicators that there's a time lapse that's taken place, but not always. It's especially one of those things like if you look at the book of Acts. Acts appears like it only takes place in just a couple years, but it's not. It takes place over decades. And we miss it a lot of times, what's actually going on because of that. In this passage, there is a time frame that's happened that we can't really see right within verse 1 to verse 2. What we see is that in the last story, David was in the area of En-Gedi, and then when he hears that Samuel has died, rather than going to Samuel's funeral, he goes instead to another area, the wilderness of Paran. And when you look at that, David probably knew very well, like, hey, I can't go to the funeral because if I go there, Saul's going to be there and there could be trouble. Even though Saul had already went his way and didn't kill David in the previous chapter, when we get to the next chapter, we're going to see Saul's right back at it. His repentance was limited. He falls straight back into his sin. There's a time gap taking place. And what we learn through the story is David has been there long enough that there's these seasons that go by. And while David is there in this wilderness, he has been interacting not with Nabal himself, but with the shearers and the shepherds. And he's very aware of what is going on. We're introduced to Nabal and his wife Abigail, and you couldn't describe them in more opposite ways. She is a woman who is discerning, all right, and beautiful. She has outwardly a beauty about her that people notice, and she's automatically attractive. But the beauty isn't just skin deep. It goes deeper. And what we're going to learn through this, there's a discernment, and usually with discernment comes wisdom. They go hand in hand. I've met a lot of people throughout the years who consider themselves incredibly discerning, but they have no wisdom. And a lot of times it's not discernment, it's being more of a busybody, okay? Getting into gossip and everybody's stuff all the time. That's not discernment. Wisdom and discernment go hand in hand, and that's what we're going to see with this woman. But her husband, it describes him as being harsh. Some translations say he's surly, right? And he's badly behaved. I kind of think of him like when you're having a really expensive, really well-made steak, and then you get the gristle. That's Nabal, all right? And it says he was a Calebite, which is probably somewhat of a play on words, because what it means is he's a descendant of Caleb. Who was Caleb? He was one of the two spies of the people of Israel that gave a good report, Joshua and Caleb. And because Caleb had faith in the Lord, and he gave a good report, and he said, our God can do this. He can do this. He was given special land, and his family had like this, the choice of things. Absolutely incredible. Caleb was a man of faith. He was a man of honor. But his descendant, not so much. He's surly, he's bad behaved, and I said it's a play on words because what does Caleb mean? A mad dog. A mad dog. And so the writer is probably putting in this to say, yeah, he's not honorable like his clan should be. Instead, he is literally just like this mad dog. And when we hear dog, we shouldn't take it in the Bible like we think of it today. All right? He's not a Labradoodle. He's not a dachshund. Probably more like a Chihuahua. Okay. No, dogs in this day, they were like wild dogs. They were just not considered this noble animal like we think of it today. It's sort of like in a lot of third world countries when you see packs of dogs just running around. That's more what it's like. But David comes, and at first, how does he appear? He says, say to them, peace be to you. Peace be to your house. Peace be to all that you have. Right? That's incredible. 3 different blessings of peace. 3 different blessings of peace, which fits so much with the previous chapter. What do we see in the last chapter? We saw David not striking out against his enemy, but instead, he tries to make peace with his enemy. And in that instance, he was able to do it. If you remember last weekend's message, I started out with the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are the peacemakers. And we saw that in David last week. And here he is. After this time, he is bringing peace. Blessing of peace to you, blessing of peace to your house, blessing of peace to all of your possessions. Awesome. Awesome. But Nabal, he's a dog. He's surly. He's the grit in the bottom of your coffee cup. And he just looks at that and he's like, who is this David? Who is the son of Jesse? Oh, he knows who David is. All of Israel knows who David is. All the regions around Israel know who David is. He is being completely disrespectful, brushing him aside. He is not doing what in that culture should be done, even to this day. When there are travelers or wanderers, you're supposed to be a host to people. It was a great sin at this time not to give food and be gracious and be generous. It's one of those things you see in the story in Genesis with Abraham. Abraham is with his wife Sarah, and there's 3 travelers that just come up. What does he instantly do? He sees them, and he instantly invites them into the camp, and he instantly says, hey, let's get food going. We're going to feed you. In that culture, that was what was expected. And Nabal doesn't do that at all. And look at David's next reaction. He hears about this, and he's like, all right, all of you, there's 600 of you. Every one of you put on your sword right now. All right? Today, it's the equivalent of every one of you grab a Glock, right? We're going in there armed, guns a-blazing. And it says, and David also put on his sword. Do you remember what his sword was? It was Goliath's sword. All right? It was the butcher maker, right? It's just this huge thing. He is ready for war. What he now wants to do to Nabal is what he has been doing to Philistines. Okay? Verse 14. But one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, behold, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to greet our master, and he railed at them. Yet the men were very good to us, and we suffered no harm. We did not miss anything when we were in the fields, as long as he went with them. They were a wall to us, both by night and by day, all the while we were with them keeping the sheep. I just want to stop on that comment right there. That is such a beautiful word picture to what David did for them. Nabal has hundreds of sheep and 100 goats. He is very rich, but by what that one description says, is they were used to having to interact with marauders, raiders, thieves. But for this season, while David was there, they experienced something completely different. Safety and security while they were out there. They didn't have to worry about these 600 men. They didn't take anything. They didn't abuse them. They were good to them. And what they did is protect them from anybody else that would try anything. Did they have to do that? No. They had no agreement. They weren't paid security guards. They weren't mercenaries out there. They did it because it was the right thing to do. And I love that picture that David and his men were just like a wall all around these shepherds while they're out there in the wilderness watching the sheep. Verse 17, now therefore know this and consider what you should do. For harm is determined against our master and against all his house. And he is such a worthless man that one cannot speak to him. Then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves and 2 skins of wine and 5 sheep already prepared and 5 seahs of parched grain and 100 clusters of raisins and 200 cakes of figs and laid them all on donkeys. Sorry if any of you like raisins. And she said to her young man, go on before me. Behold, I will come after you. But she did not tell her husband Nabal. And as she rode on the donkey and came down under cover of the mountain, behold, David and his men came down toward her, and she met them. Now David had said, surely in vain have I guarded all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that belonged to him. And he has returned me evil for good. God do so to the enemies of David, and more also, if by morning I leave so much as one male of all who belong to him. David's a little upset. David's a little upset. You have these 2 men that are at odds with each other, okay? Nabal. What is he called there? Worthless. He's worthless. It's one of those things when you look at the book of Ruth and the book of 1 Samuel, that is a phrase that comes up over and over again. It divides men into 2 categories. Men of, it's the same word, but it can be translated valor or honor, or men who are worthless. Worthless. Can I just say that's been helpful for me as we've gone through these studies. As a pastor, as a believer in Christ, I want to live out the teachings of Christ, and I want to be gracious and merciful. I want to be forgiving and giving to people. But so often, that ends up coming back to bite me. Not all people are the same. Not all people that we interact with are the same. What was true then is true now. In our culture, there are people of honor, of valor, and there are people that are worthless, honorless, no valor. You cannot expect someone who is in this category to operate and act like they're in this category. I end up a lot of times talking to people about how they get treated, Christians. And they're like, I don't understand. It doesn't make sense to me why they're treating me this way. It might be because they have a different worldview. It might be because they're just not a believer. It might be that they are just a person of poor character. And you're not going to come to a point to see eye to eye because you see things entirely differently. That's why Paul says in Romans, as much as it is possible for you, live at peace with all people. Not all people are going to live at peace with us. And we have to understand that. You have Nabal, and the Bible has nothing good to say about him. Nothing good. And then you have David, who we've seen is a warrior to the enemies of God, but he's also able to be a peacemaker. But Nabal has pushed him to the limit. David has been on the run for years now. He's been hiding all throughout the wilderness, and this man sets him off. And what David is about to do is not honorable, and it's not valor. He is about to sin by lashing out and wiping out all these men. 12 tribes of Israel from the 12 sons of Jacob. When you look at the blessings Jacob gives to his sons before they die, there's two specific ones that do not get very good blessings. Why? Because those two went in and in revenge murdered a bunch of men. And that is two tribes that kind of just disappear. Well, one doesn't disappear, they don't get any land. But they're redeemed at Mount Sinai, and those are the Levites. But look at it. He is about to commit a horrible crime. I said that I sum up this whole chapter with 3 words. What was the first word? Wrath. That is what David is acting in right now. Wrath. I am going to kill every one of them. Verse 23. When Abigail saw David, she hurried and got down from the donkey and fell before David on her face and bowed to the ground. She fell at his face and said, "On me alone, my Lord, be the guilt. Please let your servant speak in your ears and hear the words of your servant. Let not my Lord regard this worthless fellow, Nabal, for as his name is, so he is. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your servant, did not see the young man of the Lord whom you sent." Stop for a second. Even his wife is describing him as a worthless fellow. And she then says, his name is Nabal, and, folly is with him. Just what his name is, that's who he is. You can find Nabal's name in different parts of the Bible, okay? This is the story of Nabal, but you see his name all over the Bible, especially in Proverbs. You see him sometimes in Psalm. Here's a Psalm of David, and it says, "The fool says in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They do abominable deeds. There is none who does good." Did you catch his name? The Nabal says in his heart. What does Nabal mean? Fool. What were his parents thinking? Right? Literally, that's what Nabal means. His name is fool. And his wife Abigail is just like, yeah, he's fool. And he actually is a complete fool. Verse 26, "Now then, my Lord, as the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, because the Lord has restrained you from blood guilt and from saving with your hand, now then, let your enemies and those who seek to do evil to my Lord be as Nabal. And now, let this present that your servant has brought to my Lord be given to the young men who follow my Lord. Please forgive the trespass of your servant, For the Lord will certainly make my Lord a sure house, because my Lord is fighting the battles of the Lord, and evil shall not be found in you so long as you live. If men rise up to pursue you and to seek your life, the life of my Lord shall be bound in the bundle of the living in the care of the Lord your God. And the lives of your enemies he shall sling out as from the hollow of a sling. And when the Lord has done to my Lord according to all the good that he has spoken concerning you, and has appointed you prince over Israel, my Lord shall have no cause of grief or pangs of conscience for having shed blood without cause, or for my Lord working salvation himself. And when the Lord has dealt well with my Lord, then remember your servant. How many of you were actually reading along with me? That makes a lot more sense when you're able to read it versus hearing it. Talking about David being my Lord, but then she's also saying my Lord, which is the name of God, Yahweh. Goes on in verse 32, and David said to Abigail, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who sent you this day to me. Blessed be your discretion, and blessed be you. You have kept me this day from blood guilt and from working salvation with my own hand. For as surely as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, who has restrained me from hurting you, unless you had hurried and come to me, truly by morning there had not been left to Nabal so much as one male." Then David received from her hand what she had brought him, and he said to her, "Go up in peace to your house. See, I have obeyed your voice, and I have granted your petition." Abigail's awesome. Like, you see it now. Here's this woman of wisdom and discernment, and she's able to see what her husband, the fool, the mad dog, cannot see. That they should be kind to David. Her husband says, "Who's David? Who's the son of Jesse?" What does she say? You're going to be the prince. She understands exactly who he is and what the Lord is doing with David. And I love the way she diffuses the situation. She comes in and she's basically like, right off the bat, bowing down before him, giving him gifts. And notice she didn't say, "Please don't do this." She says, "Because you're not going to do this," right? It's just this assumption for her. You're not going to do this because we're here and this is being diffused. And you don't want blood guilt on your hands. When you become ruler of all of Israel, you don't want to look back and have your conscience feel shame and guilt for what you did here. You're not going to do this because the Lord is blessing you and you're his. Absolutely beautiful and amazing. And David, who is normally a man of valor, and his character is as a man of worth, is humble enough to stop, to listen to what he says, and right in that moment recognize what's going on. He praises God. Did you catch that? He's like, "Lord, I praise you, I bless you, because you sent her to stop me from murder, from blood guilt." I love that character with David. You keep hearing me say over and over again in messages, we get to be forgiving. We can be the most forgiving people on the face of the planet. We get to repent. We can be the most repentant people on the face of the planet. Just to come to him and be able to say, "Lord, I'm sorry." David didn't fall all the way to sin, but he almost did. He was tempted to the point he was about to murder somebody. Again, I've heard a lot of things, a lot of confessions over, 23, 24 years of pastoral ministry. That's one I haven't heard yet. No one's come up to me after church on a Sunday and said, I need to repent. I murdered somebody last week. This is awful. And yet God sent Abigail. God used Abigail to stop David from sinning. You see the wrath of David, but you see she, in this instance, is the peacemaker. She's the one who makes peace between the one who's going to be the king and her foolish, sinful husband. Verse 36, and Abigail came to Nabal, and behold, he was holding a feast in his house, like the feast of a king. In other words, he had enough food to spare. And Nabal's heart was merry within him, for he was very drunk. So she told him nothing at all until the morning light. In the morning, when the wine had gone out of Nabal, his wife told him these things, and his heart died within him, and he became as a stone. And about 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. I don't know what to say. Other than, don't be a fool. Don't be a fool, okay? Here's a man who's worthless, a wild dog, he's surly, he's a fool. And the Lord judged him. The Lord judged him. Notice, it was David who was about to judge him. But David was able to step back because of the words of a peacemaker and say, no, I almost sinned. It's not my place to do this. And at the time the Lord decided, he died. I am 100% convinced in my life that you cannot add or take away a single day of your life. It's all in the Lord's hands. I know your doctor and dietitian might say one thing, but I've seen too many things that just don't make sense. People who are in the prime of health die, bam, like that. And then there's people like George Burns. How did that man ever live to be as old as he lived with his health condition? You look at that, and it's just, it is at this time the Lord judging Nabal for being a fool. Verse 39, when David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, blessed be the Lord who has avenged the insult I received at the hand of Nabal. That's funny. I've never heard that at a funeral either. Blessed be the Lord who has avenged the insult I received at the hand of Nabal and has kept back his servant from wrongdoing. The Lord has returned the evil of Nabal on his own head. Then David sent and spoke to Abigail to take her as his wife. When the servants of David came to Abigail at Carmel, they said to her, David has sent us to you to take you to him as his wife. And she rose and bowed with her face to the ground and said, behold, your handmaiden is a servant to wash the feet of the servants of my Lord. And Abigail hurried and rose and mounted a donkey, and her 5 young women attended her. She followed the messengers of David and became his wife. Isn't that awesome? I mean, this is a crazy story. Go from wrath to peacemaking to her husband died. Bring her here. She's my wife, right? She's beautiful. She's wise. And she talked to me in a way that stopped me from the greatest sin I would have committed in my life up to this time. Incredible. Just the way this happens. And you have this beautiful marriage. And in it, you see David almost fall out of walking in the ways of the Lord. And yet, she stops him, and now they're married. But wait, what? Verse 43. David also took Ahinoam of Jezreel, and both of them became his wives. Saul had given Michal, his daughter, as David's wife, but he gave her to Palti, the son of Laish, who was of Gallim. What? This is one of those passages why when today might say, well, we believe in biblical marriage. Well, some people are like, well, what type of biblical marriage, right? Because you look at a passage like this, and here David, he had one wife, they were married. He goes on the run. Saul takes her and gives her to another man, but that is still David's wife. And now he's here, and while he's on the run, he meets Abigail, and he's like, she's beautiful, she's so wise. You're now my wife. And then sometime around this time, he sees this other lady, and he's like, oh, now you're my wife too. It's not biblical marriage. It's not biblical marriage. We first see that coming actually from the line of Cain. When you go all the way back to Genesis, the polygamy or the polyamory as so often called today. It is interesting because in a setting like this, we're in a town that's still very conservative, a farming town. And for us, we tend to look at this and kind of chuckle about it. When I talk to friends of mine that are pastors in Portland, they're like, oh no, we deal with questions like this all the time. Because this is like where our culture is going. This is where a large portion of our culture already is, right here. Remember that at the time this is being written, it's moving from the time of Judges into the time of the Kings, right? And what was the main description of the time of the Judges? Everybody did what was right in their own eyes. Everybody did what was right in their own eyes. And there's this gap that's overlaying each other where there is still this kind of thing taking place. Thus, you see David ready to go out and slaughter somebody, but he's stopped. And you see David taking more than one wife. That's not what God intended from the beginning. The Bible's clear on that. We see it in Genesis. And we also have that standard when we look at the New Testament. Clearly, that is the standard all throughout the New Testament, one man, one woman. That's why even one of the qualifications for being an elder, a bishop, an overseer in the church is to be, literally in Greek, it says a one-woman man, a one-woman man. And some people have tried to say, well, I mean, what does that mean exactly? Just one at a time? It means a one-woman man, right? Your heart, your eyes, your commitment is for this woman. Absolutely incredible story here when we look at this. A lot to the story and ins and outs. And like I said, in my mind, I set it up in three different sections with wrath, with a peacemaker, and with a marriage. A lot here we can just look at and learn little bits and pieces here or there. But let's double down on that word wrath for just a second. I'm going to go quick here. I'm thinking of the words in the New Testament. Romans chapter 1, verse 18. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness, unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world, in the things that have been made. So they're without excuse. We are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images, resembling mortal men and birds and animals and creeping things. Wrath. The same type of wrath we see in David is the type of wrath God has. The difference, David's was unjust. God's is just because he is the judge. He is the judge. And that's a heavy passage right there. And when I read it that way, it's like, whoa. But let's read the 2 verses prior to that. Paul says, I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. For in it, the righteousness of God is revealed from faith for faith, as it is written, the righteous shall live by faith. What Paul does is he first talks about the gospel, that there is hope and that there is a way to avoid the wrath of God. What is that hope in that way? I don't know if you caught this. Let me read one more time some words of Abigail. Verse 24, she fell at David's feet and said, on me alone, my Lord, be the guilt. Please let your servant speak in your ears and hear the words of your servant. Let not my Lord regard this worthless fellow, Nabal, for as his name is, so he is. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your servant, did not see the young men of my Lord whom you sent. Abigail in this story did no wrong. It's the fool who did it. And she goes to the king and she literally says, let the guilt be all on me. Interesting twist to the book of 1 Samuel. Because in this story, Abigail is the representative, the foreshadowing of the gospel of Jesus Christ.